Hey everybody, welcome back to the Horror Trans podcast. It's been a couple weeks since I've done one of these. As I've mentioned previously, I had a rough week last week with one of my best friends passing away. And the week before that, we lost internet at our house, and I had to wait for the new internet to get hooked up. So I'm back to putting out videos again, hopefully on a regular schedule. Um, So as always, it's been a couple of weeks, and I've watched a lot of movies these past 2 weeks. Some of them were rewatches, some of them were first time watches, and some of them were horror movies that will have reviews coming soon. So I have to go all the way back a couple of weeks. I watched Creepshow 2. Almost immediately after I watched Creepshow, I was like, alright, this was good, so let's watch the second one. I've already done my review of it. I don't know if it's live yet. It might be coming later today. I can't remember. But that should be coming soon. Also, I watched Cat's Eye, another Stephen King horror anthology. A review of that is also coming soon. And I watched Night of the Creeps. That's another horror movie that I watched to review. I also watched The Frighteners, which I have never heard of this movie before. I had it confused with Fright Night for the longest time. So I didn't even know this was a real movie. So when I watched it, I was like, oh, I thought this was just Fright Night. So that one took me by surprise. I watched Dreamscape. I can't review it yet because the movie was a fever dream. So I have to go back and watch it a second time to see if I can pick it apart, because there was a lot happening. So I'm gonna watch that one again before I review it, because if I just reviewed it right now, I would be like, I don't know, I couldn't fucking make heads or tails of what was going on. So I'm gonna try to watch it a second time with a more watchful, attentive eye. I also watched, or rewatched, I should say, Species 3. I may have already reviewed that one. I've seen the entire 4-film Species saga a few years ago when I bought the 4-pack on DVD. So these are rewatches for me, but I wanted them to be fresh in my mind before I reviewed them. I watched Slither. That's another one that I watched to review. And Videodrome, which I think I've already done my review of Videodrome. That one might already be live, so you can go check that out. And then the rest of these are sci-fi films. They're not really horror films in the slightest, so they won't be ones I review, but they're just movies I watched. I rewatched the Avengers saga, starting with Ultron and then Infinity War and Endgame, because I just recently rewatched The Avengers, the first one, like a month ago. So I took like 2 days to watch through that saga. And then I watched Transformers Dark of the Moon. Now, this is the third time I've attempted to watch Transformers Dark of the Moon. And it took me 3 tries to get through it, because every time I watch it, I'm like, I don't know what the fuck is going on. This is boring, and I turn it off. So I finally said, no, I liked Bumblebee. I liked the 2007 Transformer movie. I love the G1 cartoons and the toys. I want to get through this saga and have a more informed opinion on the films. So I finally did watch it, and I'm going to be honest, it didn't do it for me. I did appreciate the callbacks and references to the Ultimate Doom, which is like the majority of the source material that they are adapting. So I enjoyed that, but this movie's a clusterfuck. And then I'm still watching Season 3 of the original 1980s, 90s TMNT cartoon. I am midway through Season 3 now. There's a lot of episodes, and I can't just sit and watch for 3 hours at a time. I can watch like 1 or 2 episodes a day most days, but some days sometimes I go 2 or 3 days without watching any, because I'm going to be honest, I have to be in the mood. But because of that, I decided to go ahead and watch the 2 Michael Bay produced TMNT movies, TMNT 2014 and TMNT Out of the Shadows. I watched 2014 Sunday, I believe it was Sunday morning, and then Sunday night, I live streamed me watching Out of the Shadows for the first time, reacting to it as I was watching it. So that video should still be up on the channel if you want to go back and watch that. Because it's been a couple of weeks, I do have plenty of news and rumors to go through. But I didn't want to go too far back because some of it's old news at this point. But I'm going to be reading through a few stories. And I may or may not have a couple of trailers. I pulled up a couple of trailers. But as I go through, if I look at the articles and they don't look that interesting, I'll skip over them. But we'll see. So the very first one I have comes from... A lot of these are going to come from Bloody Disgusting. And the headline is 2 new Evil Dead movies now in the works. It says that Ghost House Pictures has just hired Francis Galuppi to write and direct yet another brand new Evil Dead movie. The project is described as an original story that Galuppi developed and brought to Raimi and team. No word on a plot or who will be producing, as it's early days here. It says that Sam Raimi hand-selected up-and-coming filmmakers to put their own spin on the franchise. So there's at least 2 new Evil Dead movies at various stages of pre-production. And then this one is also from Bloody Disgusting. It says, official Funko video game, Funko Fusion, unites properties including The Thing and Jaws. And there is a trailer. Before I watch the trailer, let's read some of the article. Funko and 1010 Games have announced upcoming video game Funko Fusion. It is loaded with Funko Pop-style horror icons. The official trailer features The Thing, The Mummy, Jaws, Jurassic World, and even Jordan Peele's Nope. Other properties include Megan, Shaun of the Dead, Five Nights at Freddy's, Jurassic Park, and Chucky. It is coming to PC, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series XS, and Nintendo Switch on September 13th of this year. Pre-orders are already live, according to the article. It is an action-adventure single-player and online co-op experience that pays tribute to NBC Universal's deep roster of beloved worlds and the irreverent Funko Pop interpretations of the figures who inhabit them. Players will celebrate their favorite movies and TV series across a wide range of more than 20 franchises, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so this looks like an interesting game. It is coming to PS4, so I might actually get an opportunity to play it. I'm going to go ahead and watch the trailer. Let's turn the volume down so I don't get the copyright strike. And see what this looks like. Oh, I'm out of my drink. Okay, so there's a Funko dinosaur. There's Back to the Future. Clock Tower. There's The Thing. Snowbound, what's it called? Compound or whatever. I don't recognize this. I don't recognize that. And it looks like you will be playing as characters designed as Funko Pops. That's interesting. Enough with the cutscenes. Let's get some gameplay. Show me the gameplay. Yeah, it's full of references. We get it. Ooh, bloody. Is this going to be an M-rated game? He-Man, Masters of the Universe. So it looks like it's reminiscent of the Lego games, kind of. It has that kind of aesthetic and looks like it has that kind of humor and gameplay. Funko Fusion. Alright, that looks interesting, so check that out. It's not necessarily horror exclusive, but it's horror related. Okay, this is from Bloody Disgusting. New Necrophosis trailer dives further into its dystopian visuals. Demo coming soon. Blah blah blah. This is a new trailer for a movie, a first-person horror adventure, Necrophosis. Oh, this is a video game. Never mind. I thought it was a movie. Alright, let's pass on that. Netflix, also from Bloody Disgusting, shares first look footage from new movie Fear Street 1988, Prom Queen. So, we've got another 80s throwback. Here's a still photo. I'll have thoughts on this, but we'll see. Is based on the book from R.L. Stine in 1992. It's Shady Side. A lot of people in the cast. It was book number 15 in his franchise. So it's just a still photo. Is there an actual... Is this a trailer? Let's see what this is. 33 seconds.
Welcome back to Shady Side. There we go. And action.
This looks like a behind-the-scenes thing. I don't want to watch that. Too spoilery. Alright, moving on. This is also from Bloody Disgusting. It says Abigail just outgrossed Universal Monsters vampire movies Renfield and Demeter. Last Voyage of the Demeter. All three films have struggled at the box office, but Abigail at least has some good news. It says Renfield ended its run with $26.4 million. That's not good. Last Voyage of the Demeter ended its run with $21.7 million. That's also not good. Abigail has already outgrossed both films, hitting $28.5 million this week. The production budget was $28 million, so yikes, this is another flop. It sounds like Universal is not doing well with some of their horror films right now. I have not seen Abigail yet. I can't really comment on it, but just looking at this picture of it and looking at the box office, it doesn't sound like the movie's doing well. So it sounds like it says Abigail will be coming home soon. Stay tuned for a date. No, nothing specific. Oh, I did see a trailer for this. This is the one with the possessed ballerina girl. Okay, I do remember seeing a trailer for this. Alright. Also, coming from the last story from Bloody Disgusting, it says Scooby-Doo live-action series reportedly in the works at Netflix. So we'll file this under rumor at this point. It says the second season of animated spin-off Velma is now streaming on Max, blah, blah, blah. And it says they're headed back into the world of live-action. Variety reports that Netflix is planning a live-action Scooby-Doo television series, with the streamer actively, quote, nearing a deal with Warner Brothers Television. It is a 1-hour drama project with Josh Applebaum and Scott Rosenberg attached to write and executive produce. And then it just mentions the cast of the live-action films. So I'm filing this under rumor until we get an official announcement. This was reported on yesterday, so still a little early to be commenting on it, but could be interesting if it turns out to be true. This one's coming from JoeBlow.com. It's not so much a news or rumor, it's just sort of speculation, and the headline is 28 Days Later, how will it look in 4K? Now, when I reviewed 28 Days Later on Horror Trends, My biggest gripe is the movie looks like shit because it was shot on an SD digital camera. SD at the time. It says resolution of 720 by 576. Yeah, so it's gonna look. It doesn't even look better on Blu-ray than it does on DVD. It's like the same fucking digital file. So why are they trying to release it on 4K is beyond me. This reads like an opinion piece, so I didn't skim through it. So this isn't an announcement that it's coming to 4K. And I'm just going to go ahead and call it. This movie absolutely should not be released in 4K. It shouldn't have even been put on Blu-ray, to tell you the truth. Leave it on DVD where it belongs. Or fucking leave it in the trash bin where it really belongs. Also coming from Joe Blow, this is a summary of everything we know about Scream 7, according to Joe Blow. So let's see what we have. Excuse me. Alright, so they mentioned Melissa Barrera fired. We've already beat that horse to death. Jenna Ortega left. Neve Campbell is coming back, possibly with Patrick Dempsey. There's still a question mark on that. No confirmation on the director. I thought they had announced that Scott Williamson was going to direct. Okay, it does mention Kevin Williamson is set to direct, and that's pretty much all they have. So this is a clickbait article, so I should have skimmed through that. All right, let's move on. All right. Horror News Net. This headline is Night of the Dead Sorority Babes from Acrostar Productions Raps Production. So this is a B movie, it sounds like. They are funding it through Indiegogo. The summary is gorgeous sorority babes get initiated by two villainous entities. Will any pledges survive? Party till you drop dead. A lot of B-movie actors are attached. They are just basically quoted as saying they're having a good-ass time. I don't see a poster or a... well, I see a sort of poster. I don't see a trailer. So I guess they're still working on it. Night of the Dead Sorority Babe stars Lynn Lowry, Anne Marina, and Angel Nicole Bradford, Jessa Flux, Mel Heflin, Anna Clary, Kelsey Livinggood, Mia Katz, Ashley Amberlin, Samantha Hupp, Trisha Bagby, Miranda Kilpatrick, Ashley Hefner, and produced by Anne Mirna, directed by Steve Harmon and Angel Nicole Bradford, assistant director. Okay, so blah blah blah. Alright, so that's out there if you want to give to the Indiegogo. It's on Horror News Net. Also from Horror News Net, it says, new horror film Piglet announced from Spookhouse MediaWorks and Strange Film Studios. It is Winnie the Pooh meets Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Piglet is a new horror film coming from Spookhouse MediaWorks and Strange Film Studios and directed by August Aguilar. I don't know if this is connected to the Blood and Honey franchise or not, but if it looks like it might not be. Okay, they mention the public domain frenzy in their words. So this might just be another stab at it. But they do have a website, pigletmovie.com, so go ahead and check that out. This one is also coming from Horror News Net. It is Southern Horror, an anthology feature film with a soul-crushing taste of horror and humanity launches Indiegogo campaign. Southern Horror Anthology feature film is a collection from filmmakers in Columbus, Georgia. They've recently launched a haunting Indiegogo campaign. Haunted landscape of the American South. Blah, blah, blah. Not much to go on. It looks like there's a video. I don't know if it's a trailer or not, so let's click on it and see what we get. Promo teaser. Stream it on Amazon Video, December 2024. Amazon Prime Video, excuse me. That's it. That didn't tell me anything. Alright, that was worthless. And finally, coming from Fangoria, it says, The Exorcism. Russell Crowe faces his demons in new trailer. The Kevin Williamson produced meta horror hits theaters on June 7th. As soon as I read that sentence, I lost all interest in this movie. I don't want to see a meta fucking Exorcist movie. But let's watch the fucking trailer and see if it looks like shit or not. I mean, Kevin Williamson did a good job with Scream, but get outside your wheelhouse, dude, and try something different. Also, when I think of, like, horror movies, Russell Crowe's name doesn't come to mind. When I hear Russell Crowe, I think of, like, cheesy fucking action movies. I could be wrong. I haven't seen his entire filmography.
All kinds of messed up stuff happened when they were making movies like The Omen or The Exorcist. And the guy your dad replaced? Everything's cursed.
So this looks like it's going to be reminiscent of Wes Craven's New Nightmare. I'm not interested. I'm not even going to watch the rest of the trailer. I don't give a fuck. Kevin Williamson, you're fucking played out. I'm sorry, dude. It's time to move on with your life. Stop living in the fucking 90s, god damn it. It was almost 40 years ago at this point. Alright, so that's enough news and rumors. Let's get on to the topics. First topics, we got some video game related topics. First topic is, are horror video games too scary? Now, obviously horror video games spans a wide range of genres and subgenres and everything else. You have RPGs like Diablo. You have first-person shooters like Doom and Fear. You have action-adventure games and survival horror games like Resident Evil and Silent Hill. And then you've got, the Metroidvanias like the Castlevanias and the Ghosts and Goblins and stuff like that, platformers and side-scrollers, etc. You've even got fighting games like Mortal Kombat and Night Stalkers. So, the question is, are horror video games too scary? In other words, are they too immersive? We're talking games like Diablo, Fear, Silent Hill franchise, stuff like that. One of the reasons I avoid playing most horror video games, especially survival horror, is because, for me at least, they are too scary. Because they are too immersive. Now, I watched my girlfriend play Doors on Roblox, and the jump scares in that game made me cover my eyes, and I was hyperventilating. I was like, I'm about to have a panic attack. That game scared the shit out of me, and I wasn't even playing it. I was just watching someone else play it. I refuse to watch gameplay videos or Let's Plays of Five Nights at Freddy's because I don't want to have a fucking heart attack. So, as a horror fan, I'm torn because I like horror movies. Obviously, I love horror comics and action figures. And I do like some horror video games, at least as a theme or a setting. Like I said, Diablo, Resident Evil are fine games, Castlevania, Ghosts and Goblins. But, like, when you get into, like, the Silent Hill, and you get into, like, God, is it House of the Dead? Not House of the Dead, that's the light gun game. What's the one I'm thinking of? I can't remember. There's so fucking many of them. Anyways, when you get into those types of games, those like survival horror types of games, like the first Resident Evil game, I can't play those games. They're too intense for me. They are, in my opinion, too scary. Because modern video games, especially with 3D graphics and visuals and, you know, everything else, like The Last of Us, I'll bring up, it's too realistic. It's too immersive. And the thing I like about video games is they are immersive. I can get sucked into that world and I feel like I'm there. But if I'm like in that world and I'm afraid for my life, I don't want to experience that. I want to see horror happen to someone else. I don't want to experience it happening to me. So I am of the mindset, just as a horror fan, I still have to say, I am not very interested in super immersive, scary horror video games. Do I want a good horror setting? You know, vampires, werewolves, whatever. In my video game, be it an action game, fighting game, or whatever, yeah, sure. I love Castlevania. I like Mortal Kombat, you know? But do I want to feel like I'm in the horror? No, I do not. So I'm going to blanket say that by and large, the immersive, open world, story-based horror games are not for me. I wrote down Ghosts N Goblins retrospective. So I've talked about Ghosts N Goblins as a horror game previously. It was one of like my first or second episodes, I believe. But the franchise is so much bigger than that first arcade game and its NES counterpart. There was also a Super Nintendo and a Sega Genesis game. The franchise went dormant for a while, and then we got Maximo on PS2, and then the franchise basically disappeared. All we've gotten since then, more or less, have basically just been like, just re-releases of the original, the classic games. Nothing to speak of, I should say, you know, at least since Maximo on PS2, to really like, you know, come on the scene and be like, hey, this is a legit attempt at keeping this property alive. So I first discovered Ghosts N Goblins one night. It was a Saturday night. I rented, my dad took me to Bogart's, was the local grocery store where we rented Nintendo games. And I rented the NES cartridge Ghosts N Goblins. And I took it home, and within maybe 10 minutes of playing the game, I already threw my controller at the wall and kicked the front of the NES, which I did in frustration a lot. That's why my NES did not survive my childhood, unfortunately, because the game was too goddamn hard. It was fun. I enjoyed it. I loved the visuals, the music, the aesthetic. It looked fun, but it was too fucking hard. And then a few years later, I was at another friend's house in his basement playing his Sega Genesis, and I spotted Ghouls and Ghosts on the Sega Genesis, and I was like, oh, I remember this game, because I didn't know it was a different game. I thought it was just basically the Genesis version of that game, because they did that with like Batman and Battletoads, which I had already experienced, so I just kind of assumed it was the same thing. I didn't realize it was a completely different game. So I started playing that game, and I actually had a lot more fun, because even though it was still hard, it wasn't as hard. And after playing it for a couple of hours, we were able, me and my friend, taking turns, were able to get pretty far into that game. And I remember having a blast. And then years later, when I started, probably around 2001-ish, in that ballpark, I started collecting video games pretty heavily. NES, SNES, and Genesis, but also Sega CD, 32X, Saturn, Atari, and some other stuff. But I was really focused on the 8-bit and 16-bit era. And that was when I picked up Super Ghosts N Goblins for the Super Nintendo. Or was it Super Ghouls and Ghosts? I get those confused. But anyways, the version of the game that was on the Super NES. And it reminded me of the one that was on the Genesis, but it also was reminiscent of the one on the NES. So I felt like it was, you know, Not as hard as the NES one, but still harder than the Genesis one, I felt. But I still had fun playing it. And I know the, is it Demon's Crest, I believe, is also in that franchise. I remember playing Demon's Crest. I believe it was on Super Nintendo. I played it via emulator, but it is what it is. I think I enjoyed that game as well, but I also got frustrated with how incredibly fucking difficult it was. And that one wasn't difficult because of the, one-hit kills and the relentless, never-ending supply of zombies, like the Ghosts N Goblins proper. That one was difficult because the controls were wonky, and I had a hard time playing the fucking game. And then I discovered, years later, Maximo on the PS2, and I learned that it was supposedly in the Ghosts N Goblins franchise. So I played it quite a bit. That one is considerably easier than the 8 and 16-bit counterparts. Considerably easier. I got pretty far in that game because it was not difficult at all. It was a 3D collectathon style platformer in the vein of like Mario 64 and Banjo-Kazooie, etc. Reminiscent of those types of games, but with a horror twist, obviously. And it was a pretty fun game. And that's pretty much all we've had in the franchise since then. It's been more or less dormant. And I don't know why that is. Is it because Capcom is run by idiots? I'll place a bet on that. Or is it the franchise was never very financially successful? I don't know if I buy that, because they wouldn't have kept making them if they weren't making money off of them. So maybe it's just a matter of it didn't translate well to 3D, and they don't know how to revive it in 2D, because that would be the way to go, presumably, because that's what people would expect or want. But Capcom, I don't know, maybe they're just like, they're just over it, or they just don't know how to design 2D type games anymore, pixel art games anymore. And since they can't make it 3D because people rejected that, they don't want to make another one. That could be a possibility. I don't know. I do remember the Ghosts N Goblins franchise being very prolific back in the day. Not quite on the level of Castlevania or Mega Man, two massively successful properties at the time. But it was definitely up there in the lexicon. It was more popular than, say, Joust or, Wizards and Warriors, which was kind of a flash in the pan. It was definitely more popular than those. So I have a couple of questions I'm going to posit to the universe. Question 1, what are your memories and experiences with Ghosts N Goblins as a franchise? And going beyond that, are there games in the franchise that I didn't mention that maybe you want to bring to my attention? I've got a couple other topics, but I need to take a break. I need to take a nap. So I'm just going to end this episode and bring the rest of this to you next week. Stay cool.